All right, September 15th. It's my first time back. Let's do this, you guys. Hello, everyone. Hello. It is good to be back. Welcome to our weekly forum on Africa, Israel, and Black America. This is the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. I am your host, Joshua Washington, the executive director of IBSI. And thank you all for your love and support. This is my first time back on our forum this year, the year 2025. Our CEO resumed these forums a few weeks ago, Pastor Dumisani Washington. For those who've been following us for longer than just this year, you'll know that the forums usually were hosted by me and my beloved wife, Olga Mishwe Washington, who passed away on the 6th of January this year, which is why we paused a lot of the things that we paused, including these forums. And so I'm back. I'm here. If some of you recalled last year, there were several forums in a row where she couldn't join me. She was either traveling or sometimes she actually wasn't feeling well. And so I've done a few of them on my own, but it is a different feeling doing it here now. So I'll let you know in advance. There's a small chance that one of two of my sons, or maybe both of them, may come into the room and interrupt me a little bit, although they should be falling asleep by now. Our usual rhythm was that I would start these off. She would finish getting them to bed, and then she would join me at a half hour later. But now it's just us, and so that might happen. So I apologize in advance. But it's good to see everyone. We have some stuff to talk about. The first thing I want to do is just greet everyone. Visit our website. If it's your first time tuning into this, you can go to ibsi.org and read about what we do, our mission, our passion, our calling, our purpose. ibsi.org. You can also read our newsletter. We have a Substack. ibsi.substack.com. We have a newsletter called Africa Israel Weekly, where we have articles. There are even podcast episodes on there, although we haven't done the last podcast we did was a while back. We still have a lot of episodes there from the past. You can check out all of our materials, articles that were written by myself, by our CEO, by my late wife, our former Speakers Bureau Chief, Olga Washington, and other contributors as well, including our IPSI ambassadors and others. And you could read up about what we do, why we do what we do, and also just our IPSI's take on things that are going on, which we're going to get into today. Also, if it's your first time, you want to support IPSI and you're not already, you can become a legacy builder by going to ibsi.org/donate. A legacy builder is someone who gives monthly, who gives a small amount. You can give as little as something like $18 a month, and those small donations really help IPSI do what it does. A lot of our donations are from smaller donors all over the country who believe in us and want to see us succeed in what we are doing, in bridging and forming and doing this Africa, Israel, Black and Jewish solidarity. So be a legacy builder. Go to ibsi.org/donate. You can also visit our merch store. We have a lot of different merchandise. I'm actually wearing one of the shirts here, the Iron Lion Zion t-shirt here. We have lots of other things. We have coffee mugs. We have shirts. I think we have journals and all that kind of stuff. So go to our website. You can check out the merch that we have there. And that it's another way that you can support the work of the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. So greetings. I see. Oh, from Milan. Oh, greetings. I was about to pretend like I knew what language to switch to and say greetings in that way, but I'm not going to do that. But greetings. Feel free to comment if you're watching wherever you're from. If you're on YouTube or Facebook or X or Instagram, you'll see this live and feel free to contribute. We have to get into a couple. Oh, sorry. And now a couple of announcements. There's a video series, and I'll share the third episode of it toward the end of this forum. It's a video series that our CEO and founder, Pastor Dumisani Washington, has been in front of and has been helping write the script for and actually doing. The IPSI's this new venture IPSI has is called "We Are Not the Same: How Free Palestine Exploited the Black Community." There are 7 episodes, and the third episode is out now. We had just posted it. Ciao, thank you. Ciao, ciao. We just posted it on. It just came out today. The third episode is called "How UN Bias Against Israel Hurts Africa." And these videos, a lot of these videos are based on things that we've been saying for years. So this particular video, Olga wrote a piece about that. I wrote a piece about that. I think all 3 of us actually, at some point over the past few years, wrote a piece about how, in different aspects, how the United Nations and the bias that they have against Israel, both with the Islamist countries and the communist countries forming a voting bloc, how it actually hurts Africa. And we've delved into that. I even talked a few times about the late Kofi Annan, the late UN Secretary General Kofi Annan from Ghana, who talked about how this obsession with Israel kind of leaves the rest of Africa in the dust. He talked about how Sudan is on fire, and we never even had a chance to talk about Sudan because whenever we all come together, there's another resolution against Israel. And I noted that he wasn't even coming from a place of I stand with Israel forever kind of thing. He was coming from a place of he was behind. He signed off on some of the condemnations because he was like, wow, this is terrible. But then after a while, he was like, okay, guys, every time we come together, you only want to talk about Israel, and there are atrocities happening all over the place. And he started to see this, not only this bias, but this calculated, coordinated attack that oftentimes, pretty much all the time, was propaganda against Israel from countries who are covering up their own atrocities and slavery and all that stuff. So check out the video. These are short educational videos. It's on our page. It's on our Instagram, IBSI Now. If you go to that Instagram page, it's all over YouTube and everything. Share it with your friends. Share it. And also, if you want to read more about it, you can subscribe to our Substack. Again, ibsi.substack.com. If you like our work, consider becoming a paid subscriber that also supports the work of IPSI. So that's the third episode. We'll show that a little bit later. Last announcement. I was in Israel in May. May was the start of my tour called Journey to Healing. It's a tour that I put together in the honor and memory of my late wife. And we visited in May, me and the boys, and their Nana V. And we were there for a few weeks. We were able to go visit Olga's grave in Haifa, and then I had a show at the end of May, which was beautiful. And while I was there, a good friend of mine, Lee Tannenbaum from Georgia, she happened to be in Israel with this group, and she asked me to come to the Tel Aviv area to this museum. It's a house, but it's now a museum called the Joseph Bal Museum. And I almost wasn't able to go, but we made it work out. And I got to meet these 2 lovely ladies who are the daughters of Joseph Bal, who's an incredible artist. This guy was like, I was learning so much about him, and it was so fascinating. And the work that he's done, and he was considered the Walt Disney of Israel back in the 50s. He pretty much, by hand, every graphic, every movie, everything that you came out at the time, he did the artwork for. He was the first animator. When he was in the concentration camps in Auschwitz, he actually drew by hand on cigarette, like cigar butts, like with cigar butts, cards, like flash cards that he would use to play games with the inmates to just keep their spirits up. And his legacy and his story was crazy. And it just really struck me. And they asked me to just help them to get the word out about a movie that's coming out about him. And so if you want to know more about the Joseph Bal Museum, you can go to, they have a crowdfunding campaign, which you can, if you're watching this, you can scan with your phone here, cosmatch.com/Joseph Bal Museum. You can read the story. It's incredibly, incredibly powerful. And it's something that I'm really glad that I was able to go and to meet them. I was also able to play a little bit of music with them as well, which was fun and was really cool to do. So Joseph Bal Museum, please support them. They're doing a showing in LA and other parts of the world, and they want to be able to get this word out. And it's a beautiful. I mean, they showed me the trailer to the movie. It just looks amazing. Bow artist at war. It's such a compelling story. And this is their father, and it's their father. They didn't know that he was actually a huge part of different like assisting with operations and stuff for the Israeli government with the things he was able to do. They didn't know that he was even a part of that until 10 years after he passed, because he wasn't even allowed to tell his own family. And so his two daughters are working very hard to get this stuff out. All right. So those are the announcements. We are going to get into this here today. I'm going to be very honest with you. This is not what I have liked to have talked about my first day back at the forum. I really don't want to have this conversation, but we need to. And part of the reason why we need to have it now is because it's being talked about now. And IPSI, for those who know us and have been following us for this long length of time, you know that our track record should speak for itself. Now, IPSI was founded in 2013, the same year that Olga's organization and her father in South Africa was founded, before we met each other. And from then to now, we have tried our very best to speak truth no matter what, even if it makes people in our own camp uncomfortable. You can't move forward properly if you're not rooted in the truth. This phrase I've been saying a lot: peace has to be built on truth. Forward movement has to be built on truth. All this stuff has to be built on truth. Otherwise, it'll crumble. And so we need to clear up some things, because there's a little bit of a mess going on right now. And we're not really willing to admit what this mess is. And if we can't admit what it is, then we can't actually do anything to fix it. So with that said, and some of you know what I'm going to talk about because the article came out today. Just a few days ago, Charlie Kirk was assassinated in front of a bunch of college students while he was having conversations with college students on a university campus in Utah University. He was gunned down, shot right in the neck, bled out, and died in front of his wife and kids. His daughter tried to run up to him for safety after hearing the gunshot. He was already gone, and the wounds he sustained, he couldn't sustain them for very long, and he died. And that was on September the 10th. Devastating. It really, just personally for me, threw me kind of back into the thick of the throes of grief. And not to make it about me, but just because, it's only been 8 months since my wife passed. I immediately thought about, Erica Kirk, Charlie's wife, and his two children, and how now they're just in shock. They're gonna have to now navigate this, and figure out how to move forward without this pillar in their family. So on a very personal level, it messed me up. I mean, to be very honest with you, it really messed me up. And then just to see how divided the country was over this was not something that was surprising, but it still hurt. It still grieved my heart to see. I would have liked to have thought that no matter who it was, and I gave the example of Cenk Younger from the Young Turks as an example for myself, right? That not only do I disagree with pretty much everything Cenk says, I really can't stand him, right? As a person, I think he's dishonest. I think he's a slime ball, all that stuff. Whenever he talks, I just can't. I watch him sometimes because I want to hear what he's saying. I want to hear what those voices are saying so I can know how to respond and all that stuff, but I just can't stand him. And if this was him at a college campus, he was gunned down, I would have been just as depth. I would have been in my room crying that night, like I was with Charlie Kirk, because it wasn't about the fact that, it was Charlie and he's done great things for Israel. It was just, this is discourse. And for someone to be killed because they have ideas that other people don't agree with, that's a slope that's so slippery, right? We don't want someone killed over some words, because I don't like, that's not the precedent that we want to set. Yet some of our country is kind of split over that. So that was difficult. And then also just grieving in general. So all that stuff going on. And thank you for your condolences. I appreciate it. Um, so that happened. And what we're seeing now in this pro-Israel space is a commemorating of Charlie Kirk, which we get. I mean, we look. This is not something that is a small thing, but Ipsy has to now kind of highlight some things that um, just to make sure that we're being honest about what was going on with Charlie when it came to Israel. And so I pinned an article that was published yesterday in our Substack, again, ibsi.substack.com. The article is called Charlie Kirk and Israel. It's complicated. And the reason for this article is because it is. And Ipsy has already been calling this out. So we're not just randomly talking about this now. We've been tracking, just like we've been talking a lot about anti-Semitism and Jew hatred and the institutional Jew hatred on the left side of the aisle. Institutional meaning it's in the college campuses. Over 90% of professors have kind of like the same type of political leaning, and they teach doctrine. They don't teach you how to think. They teach you what to think. We talked about what is Louis Farrakhan. We talked about what is it, Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, all that stuff. We don't shy away from any of that stuff. But we've also been clocking and calling out and talking about at length the more and more blatant Jew hatred on the right side of the aisle. And of course, when I say that, I think most people are thinking the same person. Candace Owens is probably the most because of her name in pop culture, right? She's probably the person that we all think about the most. But there are many more figures, and we've talked about Tucker Carlson, we've talked about Steve Bannon, we talked about Dave Smith, the Hodge twins, all that stuff, right? And how it's growing, and some of these fringe conspiracies are starting to become more and more mainstream, and we're seeing some on the right call it out, but many of them are silent, and the ones that are calling it out are also getting threatened and intimidated, and we'll talk about that as well. So we've been clocking this for a while, and one of the things that we noticed right after October 7, 2023, when 1,300 Israelis and other foreign nationals were slaughtered and kidnapped and raped, and all this stuff was recorded on GoPros and passed around, that something shifted, ladies and gentlemen. And one of the things that we noticed that was starting to happen was that certain people just kind of started changing their tune. Candace was probably one of the earliest and the loudest, and she probably is the most crass about it in terms of her wording. I mean, she went so far as to even resurrect an old debunked story that the Nazis used as their foundation to exterminate the Jews in Nazi Germany, which was called the Damascus Affair. You can look it up. Look up the Damascus Affair, and it's a story. I'm gonna summarize it very briefly about a clergyman and his partner were involved in some shady dealings, and they got murdered. And someone spread the rumor that they were murdered by Jews because the Jews wanted to use their blood for Passover. That's called a blood libel, and that's one of the oldest blood libels in the book. That Jews like to use Christians' blood for their matzah. Like that's something that's said. There was no investigation. There was no evidence for it at all. Nothing. But everyone grabbed hold of that narrative. They tortured one to death. They forced one to convert to Islam, and then, or one of them converted to Islam, I should say. The other one was tortured to death. Synagogue was burned down. Torah scrolls were destroyed because of this conspiracy theory. Okay. Now, again, not only was there no evidence for this, the evidence came out later that they had nothing to do with the murder. They weren't even near the guy when they weren't even near those clergymen when they were murdered. It had nothing to do with anything. But that story is told over, and that was back in I want to say the 1400s, right? So that story for centuries now been told by anti-Semites uh, when they need something to stand on. So Hitler cited this story as one of his justifications for exterminating Jews in Germany, for slaughtering and committing genocide against 6 million Jews, men, women, and children, um, in Germany by the Holocaust or the Shoah, Holocaust by bullets in Ukraine. Right. This was one of the stories that was stood on. So why am I sharing the story with you? Because Candace used that story and pretending like she found some gem. I remember the way she was telling it was like, I have this hidden treasure I have to share with you guys. Oh, and I don't know. And she, there's this tactic where you act like you act like you're just this innocent person who's just stumbled upon the story. I don't know why. And there's this thing, and the Damascus affair. You guys need to look it up. I mean, apparently these Jews, they killed this Christian guy and used his blood for Passover. I went, that's not new. As a matter of fact, you're standing on the shoulders of literal Nazi, like the Nazi regime party, right? The Nazi, you're standing on those shoulders. Why are you elevating? Why are you resurrecting this story? And if you did that much research to find the story, then if you did that much research to find the story, then you definitely found that the story was debunked. You definitely saw, because it's not hard to find. You look up Damascus affairs, the overwhelming majority of the documenting of the story tells you it was not true. It was a lie. It was a rumor. So if you did that much work to find the story, there's no way that you didn't find that it was a lie, right? So you bringing it up and going, I don't know. I just the Jews, they just, come on now. So Candace was doing that kind of stuff, just straight up, but she was not the only one. And so coming back to Charlie Kirk, what happened shortly after October 7th, when it was reported by the Gaza Health Ministry, which is just Hamas, any ministry in Gaza, it's just the terrorist group Hamas. They're the only ruling group in Hamas. I mean, in Gaza, they're the only ruling part. They're the only party that rules Gaza. So any Gaza such and such ministry or Gaza that you hear about, that's just members of the terror group Hamas who run it. So according to the Gaza Health Ministry, according to Hamas, Israel bombed this Greek church. And so this happened, this cycle happens so much. Without verification, without investigation, everyone starts reporting on it. Israel bombs a church, Israel bombs a church, Israel bombs a church. Now, Candace, we already knew what Candace was going to do. She's already been showing her true colors. We saw it. Great. So Candace posts, every Christian needs to speak up because this is terrible. And as a Christian, and she did the whole Christian card, hashtag Christ is King, all that stuff, which already angered us at IPSI. As a Christian myself, I'm like, okay, so Candace, you've never, ever once in your career, maybe years ago you did it once. We haven't found anything of you ever publicly talking about Christians being slaughtered in Nigeria, the underground church in Iran, Christians who are enslaved and slaughtered and trafficked in Sudan, Christians in Algeria you've never talked, the underground church in China, nothing. You have never once talked about Christian persecution. And it's all around. Up to 5,000 Christians a year on average are slaughtered in Nigeria. Just recently, a church was burned down and Christians were slaughtered during a service. I think it was last week. There's another story we'll talk about later, but come on. So now all of a sudden you're concerned about Christians when you hear this unverified story that maybe Israel bombed this church, this Greek church. So that was the first thing that happened. But then Charlie Kirk retweets Candace Owens and doubles down. He just retweeted it. He quote tweets it and doubles down. Yes, Christians, we need to speak up. We need to speak up. So we wrote an article about this. We wrote an article about it called Justice. The article is called Justice is a Divine Concept. Okay. I penned that article. So that was the first time I think that we wrote something about what's going on with Charlie when it comes to this. And the reason why is because Charlie has demonstrated a very deep understanding and appreciation for Israel and the Jewish people. We've seen him debate people on Israel. We've seen him go toe to toe with really high minds about this. His family, kind of just like my family, His family observes some of the Jewish customs like Shabbat. I heard him in an interview one time. He was talking about Genesis, and he just said Bereshit. I was like, okay, that's the Hebrew. So I'm like, he understands this on a very deep level. So for him to retweet an unverified story from Candace and say, "Oh wow, this was bombing a church," that was not an ignorant person who just wasn't really up to date on the Middle East, right? That was something very strange, because Charlie, up until that point, had demonstrated how much and how deeply he was how deep his knowledge went of the conflict. Are you guys following me? So for someone to, let me just rephrase this because I want to make sure you guys get this. If I'm very new to everything, right? I'm trying to get to know about the world and all that stuff, and then I see a headline that says Israel bombs a church, I might share that. Oh, wow, this is terrible. I don't know how nefarious news organizations can be. I don't know that the Gaza Health Ministry is actually a terror group, right, run by terrorists. I don't know this kind of deep stuff. I see Gaza Health Ministry, and I'm thinking, oh, it's a health ministry. Why would this health ministry lie about what just happened to this church? Obviously, people in Gaza saw the church come down, and so I don't know. So yeah, I might share that article, not knowing that there's a lot of different layers of propaganda. But that's not what Charlie was. Charlie knows how the propaganda works. In the war in 2021, he was calling out all kinds of stuff. So the fact that he would quote tweet Candace and say, Christians need to say something, we were like, okay, this seems disingenuous. Now, about a day later, or maybe 2 days later, pictures surfaced of the Greek church in Gaza, still standing, was not shot down, was not bombed. I think one of the rockets hit the annex. The annex was only partially damaged, but they were able to fix it. And also, just like every war before this, Hamas was hiding inside of the church, right? They were shooting from the church. Israel was trying to figure out how they can get them without destroying the church, and they didn't. So the story came out that, oh, by the way, the church is still standing. Israel actually didn't bomb it. Candace, we weren't expecting her to retract her statement because we've seen her do her thing. But what we noticed was that Charlie never retracted. Charlie never said, hey, guys, you know what? I just realized I contributed to the propaganda against Israel. The damage I did, I'm sorry, especially with my big platform. The church is still standing. We got to be committed to getting to the facts. And, Hamas is a propaganda machine, so we have to be careful. Nothing. He just moves on. So those two things together, we were like, that's not good. So we wrote about it and we called it out. That was the first thing that happened. Okay. Second thing that happened. Well, I don't know if it's the second thing, so I might be a little bit out of order, but there's another clip. There's a clip that I'm going to share with you. Charlie is on a podcast, sitting across from the host, who is Patrick Ben David. And Charlie talks about kind of the inner workings of Israel. He talks about the judicial reform. He accuses the Prime Minister Netanyahu of trying to redefine the Constitution, to change, to basically flip the Constitution on its head, and then also implying that he may have known about what happened October 7th. And he said, well, maybe people didn't tell him, but he's like, he's kind of stumbling through this thing. But then he makes a comment about Gaza that, again, because of his track record, really struck us as odd. And I'm going to share you this clip right now. Go ahead, producer.
I got to be careful the way I say this. They're going to try to ethnically cleanse Gaza. Yep. I mean, I don't use that term lightly, okay? They're talking about basically removing 2.5 million people from there, okay? And honestly, they have a mandate to go seek justice and revenge. They do. This idea that they need to have a truce or a peace treaty, that's morally crap after you see women and children be burned alive and dragged to the streets. But there are some serious questions here, Patrick. And let me tell you, my pattern recognition over the last 5 years has become pretty sharp. COVID, Maui fires, Epstein. When I see a story and it doesn't click, our guts are usually right.
yeah, so I made that video earlier. Now you just seen this clip. There was also another clip that's because a lot of these clips of him speaking out against certain things and making his own observation over the past couple months, they're starting to resurface. And of course, I had never seen any of them. There was this one that I just watched with him and Megyn Kelly, and he again states, you know, that he has support for a certain place, but also that he is questioning and he is observing something similar to a certain time in Germany. And he also states in that video how he's an American citizen, Megyn Kelly, like we're Americans, but somehow I feel more censored here as an American, that I'm not allowed to talk or say certain things about certain people somewhere else. It just makes you question. It's really, it's.
And the person that made that video, I don't know this lady, but I'll unravel this as it goes, because she's one example of many. She's coming from the perspective, she's anti-Israel, right? So what she's doing is saying maybe Charlie's on to something, maybe, and Charlie was, like I said, he implied this and he said it, maybe the Israeli government was behind the October 7th attacks, right? Maybe there was something nefarious going on. So she's coming from that perspective, which is dangerous, right? So he's, and here's my thing on this, especially for someone like Charlie, for someone like us in this space. If you decide that you're going to make a statement like that, you better have some evidence. You better have something. You can't just get up and say, I don't know, maybe October 7th was an inside job with your huge platform. And then everyone goes, what do you mean by that? I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. And now it's circulating all over the place. Oh, see. And now he's gone. People are saying, you see, he was. Now what's happening is that people on the far right and the far left are accusing or are blaming Charlie Hebdo's assassination on Israel. That's what they're doing now, which is why we have to, part of the reason why we're having to parse this stuff out and walk you through some of this stuff is because, again, the truth has to be our anchor. We're not doing this to attack Charlie. We're not doing this to come after him. The only reason why we're doing it now is because it's become a huge thing now. And Charlie has become somewhat lionized in the pro-Israel community. And we understand, but it's, no, he wasn't unwavering, unfortunately. And this is one of the things. So people are starting to cite some of the things that he said and saying that this is why he was taken out. He was taken out because Israel didn't want him saying these things, which is not true. And I'll continue through with you. So that's the other thing that happened. Now, earlier this year, Tipping Point USA had, which is the organization that Charlie Kirk founded, they had their annual America Fest. There are a few people. I meant to send that graphic to you, producer. You could see the list of speakers on there, but there were tons of speakers on there. And Candace Owens was originally slated to speak at this conference. She was removed, and she was removed by Charlie himself, and he cited her anti-Semitic rants, her defaming of Israel, her baseless accusations, just her being off the chain, just like unhinged, basically. And he said that rhetoric like hers is demonic. So not only did he let her go, he made sure everyone knew why she couldn't speak at this conference. Okay, fine, that's great. That rightfully so, right? Anyone who has an opportunity to platform her should not. However, the thing that makes this even worse was that there are prominent, just as anti-Semitic, just as Jew-hating, just as anti-Israel voices that still platformed at America Fest. Names and people who are even more influential than Candace. You got Tucker Carlson on that still. And at this point, Tucker has yay and amen Candace on all the stuff that she said and added stuff of his own on his own platform. Steve Bannon, Jack Posobiec. Like, he had these very prominent names on here who were saying some of the same stuff that Candace was saying. Okay, so hold on a second, Charlie. So why would you boot her for that reason and keep them? So now it just looks like you're window dressing. Did you think that you wouldn't lose as many followers if you got rid of her? You didn't have much to lose? Were you just making it look like you're making a statement? What is going on? Right? What is happening? Why are you doing this? Why are you on Tucker's podcast and having Tucker on yours and bringing Tucker to your things when you just said that you can't platform Candace because of her defamation of the Jewish people? Because Tucker is doing the same exact thing. So now one has to wonder what is going on here. What is happening here? And that was like another thing that was okay. It's not that Charlie was had chosen this side like Candace did. It's like there's things going on that are leading or had led us to believe that he's playing both sides. That I think personally he does have an affinity and a deep love and appreciation, but as a businessman and as someone who ran the largest conservative media platform in the country, that he was trying to keep his tent as big as possible, which is not cool, because what he did to do that was acquiesce to some of the Jew hatred so he could keep everyone under one tent. Then he acknowledged, so by kicking Candace out, he acknowledged that there is an anti-Semitism problem on the right, but he didn't really want to do anything about it for real. He just got rid of Candace and then he kept everyone else, which is not great. So that was another thing that made us go, yeah, this is. So we called him out then. I think one of the earlier live forums, our CEO called that out. So this is, like I said, this is not Ipsy getting up all of a sudden and deciding that we want to pile on this man's, dance on top of his grave. It's nothing like that at all. Respect for him and everything, but this is for us. This is for us in the pro-Israel community. We are enshrining him in terms of being an unwavering friend of Israel. But in post October 7th, he really wasn't. He was playing this line that was dangerous for him. And on top of that, what's happening is that by not actually dealing with what's going on, we're leaving that vacuum there for the far left and the far. There are huge accounts both on the left side and the right side, both Arab and white and black and Muslim and Christian, anti-Israel and Jew-hating voices on both sides of the aisle who are continuing to push this narrative that it was Israel's fault. They decided to take Charlie Kirk out. Now, what that does for them, it just exposes their obsession with Jews in Israel, because if you really wanted to believe that Charlie was taken out by a foreign entity, by a foreign country, you could point to some evidence for other things. If you really wanted to believe that it was some sort of conspiracy to take him out by a foreign country, it would make more sense that it was a country like Qatar that organized it. Why? Because Qatar, they're one of the main funders of Hamas. They fund to the billions and billions and billions every year. Our colleges, our universities, they're responsible for the propaganda that flows through our college campuses, all that stuff. That in May, when that couple, Yaron and Sarah, the Jewish couple who was in DC at a Jewish cultural event, they were shot in cold blood. Sarah was shot several times by this man who wound up, when he was getting arrested, was chanting "Free, Free Palestine." Right, it was in front of everyone's face. When that happened, a couple of things happened. One, he pleaded not guilty in court, which is concerning because everyone saw, he had multiple witnesses, everything. But two, one of the things that happened with that was that the Qatari media was celebrating and mocking this killing. Right, so you have evidence of of countries that that hate America, who wouldn't want to see someone like Charlie Kirk continue to do their thing. So if you want to point to a country, you could point to a country like that. If you wanted to point to something else, it actually stands more to reason that Charlie Kirk was taken out by a right-wing anti-Semite who didn't like that he was a Zionist. And I'll tell you why. And you can point to some concrete things. I'm not just going to say that and leave you here. I'm going to play for you now a video by a very prominent conservative pro-Israel voice, Glenn Beck. This was just several months ago. He was on an interview talking about what is happening in his camp, what is going on in his own camp, and what he's had to face. Go ahead and play that, please, producer.
I want to talk about what you just touched on before, which is what's the way things are going for the relationship between Americans and Israel and the Jewish community, because I never predicted this, that you would start to see figures on the conservative right, and I would still say it seems to be like a minority, but you know where I'm going with this, who are starting to articulate a hostility. I really never saw this coming, but a hostility to Israel. Conspiracy theorists, the Candace Owens, and sometimes the Tucker Carlsons and others, What do you think is going on here? And are you concerned that this is going to become, like 10 years from now, you'll have a congressman, senators that start to have these views and it kind of overtakes the Republican Party?
I don't think it's going to take 10 years.
Really?
I said in 2008 or 9, I'd have to look it up clearly. You are going to see the hatreds of the 1930s, not just on the streets of Germany. You're going to see them all over Europe, and they will come here as well. And you will see exactly what we saw in the 1930s here on our streets. And nobody believed me. And here we are. Here we are. This is an ancient evil. I will tell you that it doesn't just concern me. I take it very seriously because we're now getting threats from our own side.
Wow.
Are getting threats, and we're in danger. And I have to tell you, first, it's ancient, and it's easy to blame somebody else. And who always gets it? The Jews do.
So if you guys listen to what he was saying, I want to back it up, or I'll back it up for you. Threats. So he was saying, Glenn Beck, have been receiving threats from people on my side. So let's back up for a second. He said, "Who always gets blamed? The Jews do." During the bubonic plague. Okay, I wasn't going to talk about this, but I think just to give you another example, the bubonic plague, which took place, I don't remember the time period of that, and so I apologize for that because I wasn't even planning on talking about this today. But the bubonic plague that took out, just they call it the Black Death plague between 1346 and 1353, took out, I don't know, millions of people. Just an example, right? Largely the Jewish community didn't catch that virus and get that plague, and people thought it was some sort of conspiracy, that they were dealing in black magic, or they were the ones who were infecting everyone on purpose and all that stuff. And what it turned out to be was that, Jews ceremonially wash their hands before they eat. And this is something that goes all the way back to the scriptures. And so and they still do now, right? Like observant Jews. And that was what kept them clean. I mean, that was a very basic thing. And, hygiene wasn't really that big of a thing for others. And so a lot of people were getting sick and they were dying and all that stuff. And they saw their Jewish neighbors fine and healthy, and they assumed, you must be plaguing us. And Jews were killed because of it. Throughout history, this kind of stuff happens, right? And what's happening now is that on the right side of the aisle, you have voices like Tucker and Candace and Dave Smith and like I said, Jack Pacific. They're like floating around these conspiracies, right? That Israel's destroying our country from the inside out, all that stuff. And other people on the right who are saying, no, we're not going to go down that road again, you guys. We know where that leads, and that's not true, right? Not only is it not true, we can actually talk about the countries that have infiltrated our country through our universities, through our media, all those things. We can actually talk about those things because that's not even a hidden secret, right? There are someone said, why would you let foreign countries fund the education of your children in your own country? And that's that's been happening here for decades, right? We can talk about that, but I don't know why you're going to. And so those people now, just like what happened on the left, it's happening on the right. The people who are saying, no, that's not right, they're getting threats. They're getting threats from people on their side. Some are getting death threats from people on their side. So now let's go to Charlie's murder. It stands more to reason, based on what Glenn Beck said about his own experience, that's maybe someone on the right killed Charlie. No. It has to be Israel. Why? Because Jews. That's what's going on. And the reason why we're not going to be as effective in calling that out if we can't tell the truth about what actually went on. I meant to share another video and I won't share it. But when I was talking about Qatar if you're going to blame another country, you can look at what Charlie is on record saying things that we agree with, right? About Islam, radical Islam, and how it's not compatible with Western values and why it's not compatible. And he's said that many times on different platforms. Okay, so if your logic is that Israel killed him because he said some bad stuff about Israel, wouldn't it stand to also the reason that maybe another Muslim country arranged to get him killed because he said things about them? I mean, the fact that you're only focused on Israel it just shows your hand, right? My producer's saying Turning Point. I might have said a different organization. I might have said Tipping Point or something, but Turning Point. It shows your hand, right? Because that's all you're obsessed with, and we can't really tackle and debunk that if we're not willing to be honest about the whole thing. And to be honest about the whole thing is that post October 7th, Charlie Kirk was playing both sides of this issue. I would watch debates of Charlie, like I said, demonstrating not just typical pro-Israel doesn't, just kind of has talking points. He had a very deep knowledge of the land and the geography and the archaeology and the politics and the wars and stuff happening on the ground and the history and the memory and all those things. He demonstrated such a deep knowledge. So then for him to turn around and like parrot a talking point that he knows is not true, to parrot a talking point that he's debunked before, that was disingenuous. That was wrong. And that contributed to the damage that's being done right now. That's been done and continues to be done when it comes to the anti-Israel right. And it's just that is what's happening, you guys. I mean, that's we can't. I struggle to write the article because, again, my heart is shattered in a million pieces still for his family. And it wasn't something this is not something that we enjoy doing. I didn't want to. I was dreading it. I struggled through it because, of what's going on. But the reason why we felt that the timing was now is because by not addressing it and allowing these conspiracy theories to fester, we're actually contributing to the growth of it, right? We have to be real about, because this is why. So the lionizing of Charlie Kirk now, without addressing some of the controversy, it makes it feel like a cover up, right? Israel took him out, and now we're just trying to act like he's all great. Like, no. Let's talk about all of it. Let's dispel these rumors. Let's be honest about where he was in these last couple of years, and let's talk about the whole thing. Our CEO likes to talk about this quite a bit, and it's something that resonates with me about the king Hezekiah. I think in 2 Kings. Hezekiah was one of the greatest kings that Israel has known. Hezekiah put some really great reforms in there for the Israelite people, for Israel, for the kingdom of Israel. Hezekiah torn down the high places, the idols, right, the statues, the different idolatrous sites that were erected over the decades, over the centuries by other kings. Hezekiah did a lot of amazing things, and Hezekiah did some really foolish things, right? Hezekiah was the king that this was a generation before Nebuchadnezzar. The Babylonians came. Nebuchadnezzar's father or grandfather came and wanted to see Israel. And Hezekiah invited them into his palace and showed them everything. Showed them where they keep the weapons. Showed them where he kept his shoes, his clothes, his bedroom, everything. Just give him a tour of the whole palace. And as the Babylonians were leaving, Isaiah the prophet was coming to the kingdom. He's walking. He sees these Babylonians walk by. And he's like, so he goes into the palace and says, King, what were they doing here? Oh, they wanted to come and see the guy. I showed them everything. I showed them everything in my whole kingdom. And Isaiah said, you fool, your kingdom will be taken from you. And he told him that there's going to be a leader that comes out of Babylon that completely destroys Israel, not completely, but destroys Israel, destroys the temple, carries some off as slaves, and it's going to be an exile period. And it's going to happen in your children's time. And Hezekiah thought to himself, well, hey, it's not happening in my time, so it's all good, right? So Hezekiah did a lot of amazing things, and Hezekiah really screwed up some stuff. But the Bible doesn't cover any of that stuff. The Bible doesn't paint anything with roses. It doesn't take out any bad stuff. It just tells you the story. It didn't erase that foolish thing that Hezekiah did and say, oh, this is all the good stuff. And let's, the man is dead. So let's not talk. No. Let's talk about everything in that same way. Charlie, especially when it came to speaking up and advocating for Israel and speaking the truth and uncovering the propaganda and all that stuff, he was very, very good at it. Charlie also played both sides of the issue and contributed to some of the rising of the right-wing anti-Semitism by keeping them in a circle, keep giving them the platform, buddying, sometimes signing off on what the people were saying, all that stuff. And that also has to be acknowledged as well. That's how we move forward. That's how we can properly move forward. So we don't usually spend the whole hour just talking on one topic, but it is a very it's not an easy one to get through. So thank you for bearing with me. For people who are watching right now, I appreciate it. But you can check out that article, ibsi.substack.org. That's the newest article, Charlie Kirk and Israel. It's complicated. Check it out, share it. Subscribe to us if you haven't already. I want to pause for a second and say welcome. If you're just tuning in, my name is Joshua Washington, Executive Director of the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. I see the ibsi.org/donate thing down there. If you love the work that we do, Africa, Israel, Black and Jewish Solidarity, you can donate. You can be a legacy builder. You can give monthly to the work we're doing. We do a lot of this stuff, but we also do a lot of in-person things. We do pastors events. We have several pastors forums like the forums we're doing here, but it's in a smaller group of local pastors where we can not just talk about these things, but actually engage and discuss. My first IPSI event after Olga passed was in Atlanta a couple months ago. 2 months ago. And it was a pastors forum. Olga and I spearheaded, it was my father's idea, but Olga and I spearheaded the first pastors forum in Washington, D.C. Last year, and I can't remember what month it was. Maybe it was September, October, or maybe before that. And it was powerful. We had a room full, it was about 20 pastors, and we were able to engage. We talked about some of the stuff we're talking about now. We talked about the Arab Islamic slave trade of Africans, how that Africa's enemies are Israel's enemies. Olga talks about the Africa-Israel peace, the Queen of Sheba and King Solomon, ancient connection, and our CEO spoke about some of the propaganda that has gripped the Black community, that's targeted us for decades, all that stuff. And then we were partnering with our good friend Pastor Roger Cheeks from the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, and we had a few pastors who reached out to their pastor friends. So the people who came, they didn't really know what we were about. I remember sensing a little bit of tension in the room, but they were there and they were there to listen. By the end of that session, some of the pastors were in tears. They came up to my dad and was like, I didn't know a lot of the stuff that you were teaching to us. Can I get your book? We have to stay in touch. When can you come back? I got to have you at my congregation, all that stuff. And we found that, so we did that. And then we had a series planned for this year. Of course, Olga's passing was not something that was planned or prepared for, and that was sudden. And so we paused it and we picked it up a couple months ago in Atlanta. And I wound up speaking on both the slavery piece and a little bit of the Africa piece. So I spoke on a little bit of what Olga usually speaks on, and I spoke on a little bit of what our good friend and former Sudanese slave, Simon Dang, speaks on, which he was in DC with us. And, it was a similar thing. By the end, the people who came, there was a pastor who, was just listening. He came because his friend said, you need to come to this, but he was like, who are these people? And same thing, by the end, this guy's eyes were watery. He came up to me and my father. And then he also said, the fact that you're doing this, even with this great loss that you've suffered, it demonstrates to me that how much this means to you. Right. And so those events have been so powerful, and we're doing more of those. So we'll be letting you know once we get more things on the books of when we'll be in certain places, because we'd love to do an event in your area while we're there doing our pastors forum. So we'll keep you posted on that. So that's a little commercial. Now, last couple of things, actually, these are shorter things I want to touch on. This just happened, I think, a day or two after the assassination. we got news, and you can put that graphic up there, producer, that about up to 124 Christians were slaughtered in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the DRC. Hundreds more were kidnapped. And this is just one of many, many stories. That's the most recent one, that Christians all around, and this is also why, not to go back, so this is also why it's so nefarious and disingenuous for people like Candace to say, I'm a Christian, and if you're a Christian, then you need to speak up against, when not only was that story not true in Gaza, but in the Middle East, the safest place for Christians in the Middle East to be is in Israel. The only place in the Middle East where Christians are running to is Israel. Now, the fastest growing church happens to be in Iran, where they're being persecuted. And that's a whole different story for another day. But the number one place in the Middle East where Christians are fleeing to is Israel. And Christians are being slaughtered in many, many other countries, like the DRC. In Nigeria, we talked about a story. Remember Bring Back Our Girls? And that was Michelle Obama's first tweet. Former First Lady Michelle Obama's first tweet was Bring Back Our Girls. And not only did those girls never come back, Boko Haram released a video at some point and said, they're never coming back to you. Just last year, we I think I wrote about this and I spoke about it on this forum, that there was a suicide bombing attack. I think the first one that Nigeria's ever had. I think it was 3 different suicide bombing attacks, 2 at one event and 1 at another event. 1 at a funeral and 1 at a wedding in Nigeria. The suicide bombers were female. And as soon as we saw that, we said, oh, Lord. And of course, it came out afterwards. Yes, these were the women, right? They were girls when they were taken, but these are the women now, years later, who had either been brainwashed sufficiently, or they were just forced upon the threat of death to carry out this act. Which I think that more likely it was brainwashing, because if you're going to die by bomb anyway, to be suicide, then you might as well just get shot in the head, right? I'm going to die anyway. I'm not going to die killing my own people. It stands to better reason that they were brainwashed sufficiently after being in Boko Haram's captivity for many, many years. And it just broke our hearts to pieces. And so we're talking about Christian suffering. These Christian girls like Leah Sharibu, who refuses to convert to Islam, but has been a forced bride for one of these Boko Haram men for years. She has 3 of his children and everything. These Christians are being forced to convert. They're being enslaved. They're being kidnapped and brainwashed and made to kill their own people, right? There's plenty to talk about if you want to talk about Christian suffering around the world. Plenty, more than enough. And it doesn't get talked about often. So shame on you, people like Candace and whoever else who use their platform and wear their Christianity like it's a piece of jewelry when they need to, and say, oh, Christ is king. We need to talk about this incident, this small incident that happened in Israel with this Christian group. You know, these Jews were yelling at them, and oh, Jews are so mean to Christians. Like, okay, look, there are incidents that happened in Israel, right? And I'm like, Israel's a country, and there's a country with people. You have really amazing, kind, nice, awesome, give you the shirt off their back people in Israel. And you have some, jerks in Israel, right? Just like any country. That's every single country. Let's talk about the systematic and systemic oppression of Christians in countries where it's illegal to have church. In Nigeria, they have to have church quietly and sing. And some of them still get caught. Their pastors get dragged out in front of the congregation. Everyone gets rounded up outside to watch their pastor get shot in the face. That happens every other day. In Nigeria, more in Sudan, in the DRC. So there's plenty of stuff to talk about. There's plenty of things to talk about. You want to talk about Christian? The fact that you would zero in on the country where Christians are free, and you want to magnify this little tiff between these two people. It's not only disingenuous. It's evil, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah. So if you want to talk about Christians in the DRC, 124, and hundreds more were kidnapped. And a friend of ours said this to us. He said to my father, he said, Pastor Jimmy Sani, what happened to Israel on October 7, 2023 happens to us every day in Sudan, every day in Nigeria, every day in the Congo, every day. every single day. When our friend Simon Dang, who's a former Sudanese slave, when he saw what happened on October 7th, he found the earliest flight he could. The Sudanese man he was taken as a slave at 9 years old, right? He was enslaved for over 2 years. When he saw what happened, he took the first flight he could to Israel and led a march from Tel Aviv all the way to Jerusalem. Was joined by hundreds and hundreds of people, including Sudanese Israelis who were there, just to sit and mourn and cry with the Israeli people, because he said, I know what that's like. I know what that's like. And if you're a believer watching this, I said this before, Hebrews 13:3 says, pray for those who are in chains as if you were bound with them. And we in my opinion, this is just my opinion, it's more dangerous to wade into that Christian persecution space and be dishonest about it. It's more dangerous to do that than it would just be to leave it all alone. It's more dangerous to step into this realm of, we need to speak up for Christians who are being persecuted just because you want to attack a certain group of people, only to attack the Jews, only to discredit Israel. It's not, I'm not talking dangerous in the natural, I'm talking in the spirit. Like, to step into that warfare but not actually be serious about it, it's giving, for Christians who know their Bibles, it's giving in the name of Jesus whom Paul preaches vibes, right? Where these two guys were trying to cast out a demon. They said, in the name of Jesus who Paul preaches, come out of him. And the demon inside the man said, okay, Jesus I know, Paul I know, who the hell are you? And then he beats the crap out of those two guys, right? It's giving those things. Like, don't start talking about that kind of stuff if you're not actually prepared to be in that environment, because it won't end well for you. Okay, we're a little bit over time, but I want to share this last video. This is the third episode. Of We Are Not the Same, How Free Palestine Exploited the Black Community. Check it out, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, do we have it, producer? If we don't have it, that's okay. Let's see. Okay, 1 second. This is called How UN Bias Against Israel Hurts Africa. I'm going to set it up for you. Our CEO is speaking on this. There's 7 episodes. This is episode 3. So if you want to check out the other episodes, you can follow us. You can follow. We're collaborated with the other group. It's free. It's escaping me right now, but you can follow us or their page. We have episodes coming out regularly, so you can see. And then we have more information on it in our own literature that you can check out as well. But check it out.
Radicals fool you. Black leaders have always stood on the side of Israel, on the side of Zionism, which is why they pushed back when the United Nations tried to paint Israel as a racist nation in its 1975 resolution, Zionism is Racism. They raised their voices against the UN and founded Black Americans to Support Israel Committee, whose 200 charter members included Coretta Scott King, Arthur Ashe, Ralph Ellison, and Count Basie. Sadly, it wasn't enough. The UN resolution passed. And in 2001, the UN doubled down. They held a conference in Durban, South Africa, and condemned Israel as an apartheid state. The UN exploited the pain of Black South Africans who experienced real apartheid to condemn the only nation in the Middle East where all have equal rights. And it's not just the Jews who've suffered as a result. The late South African lawyer Olga Mshwe Washington explained the cost of the UN's hypocrisy perfectly when she said, Africa is now the global eye of the terrorism storm. Slavery is rampant and Nigerian Christians continue to be slaughtered. The attention that should be afforded Africa is focused on demonizing Israel. Her words echo even louder today. I'm Pastor Dumisani Washington. See you next time on We Are Not the Same, How Free Palestine Exploited the Black Community.
So the casualty of this kind of thing, when you're on a fake cause like that, when you have dedicated your life to pulling the wool over people's eyes, there's always a price to be paid for that. Someone always suffers. And I mentioned this at the beginning of this video, that the late UN Secretary General Kofi Annan, like I said, he believed the condemnations against Israel. He was like, wow, this is atrocities. But after a while, he said, okay, wait. And he talked about how, okay, so we spend all of our time here at these assemblies, at these gatherings, coming up with resolutions against Israel. And there are other countries like Sudan who haven't been able to say a word. He was saying, you guys, fine. I'm not even saying that it's not true. I'm just saying Why is there such an obsession with this country? So much so that we don't even scratch the surface of what's happening all around the world. Part of the reason why is that some of the countries represented in the UN who are focusing so much on Israel, they represent countries who are doing the enslaving, right? They represent countries who are doing the slaughtering of Christians. When countries like Syria, who the new president al-Julani is responsible for the slaughtering of the Druze and the Christians there, when countries like Syria sit on the UN Security Council, you have to kind of scratch your head and say, how does that make sense? So then when you think about why these countries focus so heavily on Israel, it's not just because they hate the Jews, which they do, and they're open about that, but it's also to cover up their own nefarious doings. We can't even talk about what's going on in their countries because they take up all the airspace to talk about what's going on and lie about what's going on in Israel. It's part of why we do what we do at IPSI. We have to tell the truth. Truth has to be our anchor. Truth has to be our foundation. As best as we can, we have to get to the truth. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So I want to thank you for tuning in. This has been great. I'm glad that I'm able to do this. I'll be back, and you'll be seeing me on a more regular basis now. Thank you for your condolences. Me and the kids have been navigating through this grief journey, and it's been a journey. And I appreciate your guys' concerns and your support for us, even when we had the ceremony for Olga in Israel. It was beautiful, and I think about it every single day. Thank you. Visit our website, go to ibsi.org, donate, become a legacy builder, ibsi.org/donate. Support IPSI and the work we're doing. Tune in next week. We'll be here next Monday, same time, same place, 8 p.m. Eastern, the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. Thank you so much again. You guys have a good rest of your week. See you soon.